What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Motor City Metrics. This is my official debut on the Motor City Metrics. I've been away for a week. It's been an interesting week, to say the least. Me and Yooper here, Raj and Chris, should be hopefully joining us soon. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And Yooper, how you been? I know it was your birthday. I didn't have any Wi-Fi, but I made sure to text you when I did. How you
I
doing
appreciate
tonight?
it.
Yep.
Had a
How
great
you?
birthday. Went well. Um, did some stuff with some people from work. Did some things with my wife here. My daughter came home for the weekend, so it was a good time. Watched a lot of baseball. Went and saw a community college baseball game with my son. So we had a good birthday celebration, week long, I would say. So, and how was your trip? The big
Yes.
cruise.
I mean, it was fun. I've never been on a cruise, but I would definitely go again. The best part about it was just meeting a lot of new people. Like the last day, I met
You
a
got to meet
lot,
women.
a couple.
Oh, okay, that's fun.
Like
Want to be sure.
okay. So we go to I go to the dance clubs, and I met some people, and we're gonna hopefully keep in touch. And it was fun.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm definitely hopefully gonna go again. But it was much needed. I did keep up with the Tigers, did watch some highlights. Was able to catch the opening day game. And yeah, was able to catch the last couple games of the series against Boston. But yeah, today wasn't a rough game. I think really what was rough was the game yesterday. The Joey Lynch's start. If you want to get into that, what you saw, because that was probably the worst loss of the season for them. I know you wanted to start going over this
Yeah,
Red Sox
when you look
series.
back, when you think about where they've been this year, uh, nobody's real happy. No one's having a whole lot of fun watching this team. But the game two against the Red Sox with Wentz, that was really a non-competitive game. The pitching staff really showed a lot of warts, and uh, you know the old saying, well, we say a lot of bad things about walks, and they come back to haunt you. And Wentz was wild. He just couldn't find the groove, and he turned it over to the bullpen, and they were no better. And we ended up with a Zach McKinstry appearance on the mound. So, you just think about where this team is and what the expectations were. I don't think anybody really had very high expectations for this team. But I think people thought they could be at least competitive on a nightly basis. And boy, right now, it's hard to really get a feel for how they're going to do that. I mean, the Tampa series, obviously, they lost every game by at least 4 runs. They came out in Houston and won 2 games and got everybody a little bit excited, but then they dropped the final one there. And opening day at home, they get out to a 3-0 lead on the Red Sox, and you're thinking, okay, they can get this one. They drop that game, and then they're non-competitive over the weekend, and they're 2-7. And where we are, where this team goes, you and I were talking just a minute ago. The next 31 games are against teams that were over 500 last year.
Yeah, I mean, to the 2-7 start. I mean, the Tampa Bay Rays are playing unbelievable. I mean, they deserve a podcast in themselves with like historic. They're doing something that's historic, just beating teams the way that they are. Houston, we obviously know, is one of the best teams in baseball, even though the Tigers were to take 2 out of 3 from them. But I think the Boston series, I don't particularly view Boston as a contender in the American League. And that series was really, really eye-opening to me, at least for the starting pitching. I think the starting pitching was something I was higher on coming into
Mm-hmm.
the season. And it just really, really hasn't looked that great. There have been a few bright spots, and we want to stay, as positive as we can be. But Joey Wentz obviously was not able to find the strike zone. And that was a game that, you say like you let your opponents make mistakes. Boston let the Tigers and Joey Wentz make mistakes because they had 8 runs with only 3 hits. That's not the type of way you want to lose a game. And I saw a graphic on the game today. These numbers are obviously going to be updated after the game was over. This was during the middle of the game. But the own the zone objective, I posted this on Twitter. The Tigers for their hitters, they're 27th in baseball. For walk rate, they're 25th, and then for their pitchers, they're 30th in strikeout rate and 19th in walk rate. So those are probably going to fluctuate a little bit But I mean, the story of there is, own the zone. That hasn't been the case, especially with the pitching. What have you seen from their pitching so far? I think the bullpen's been decent. I mean, some relievers have struggled, some of them have been good, but I think the starting pitching, has really been the surprise for me.
Yeah. Well, and also the number I saw today is so far Tiger starters have been responsible for 39 innings so far, which is the lowest in Major League Baseball. So they're not getting high performance out of their starters. They're also not getting much quantity out of them either. So they're stretching the bullpen out early as well by not putting any innings in. I was a 67 win guy prediction at the beginning of the year, and I was even feeling weak about that. I wasn't sure how they're going to get there, but I wanted to be optimistic. And part of the reason why we pointed out on this podcast several times over the winter how they had nobody coming back who even threw 100 innings last year. So I just felt it was really hard. It was really hard to put a lot of expectation on that. I mean, you're asking for Chris Fetter to work some miracles. And so far, the miracles have been few and far between. I don't put it on the pitching staff, on pitching coaches, but I think right now they just have a team that they're just short. They're short on pitching. They don't have the horse to ride. Horses for sure.
Yeah, and I was listening to Chris Castanelli, his a review after the game, and he was saying like he really likes the staff this team has built, all the guys that Scott Harris has brought in, and I would have to agree with that. I don't think this is so much. Obviously, Scott Kubal, he was fired last year. I don't think this is so much about the staff, more so the players. The players just need to perform, and I don't think the staff, the pitching coaches, the hitting coaches have been given the talent to be able to succeed. But if you look at the starting pitching, Spencer Turnbull, he's been really, really rough. I mean, I don't know. I think you could have maybe seen this coming, him adjusting back, to major league hitting. But yeah, Joey Wentz, ERA over 10, Turnbull's ERA is over 13. Eduardo Rodriguez, I think, has been decent. He had a couple of opening day, most of his earned runs. I don't remember the reliever exactly who came in, gave up some runs. So that wasn't really Erod giving up those runs. I think he's been decent. And then Matt Manning was solid in his first start. And then Matt Boyd. I think Matt Boyd has probably been the bright spot in the rotation. If we want to stick to the positive, I thought Matt Boyd was pretty solid today. Kept Devers in check for the most part. And I think through 2 starts, he's probably been the one bright spot in the rotation.
And
as bright as it can get.
I was trying to find an artful way to say that. Yeah, that's one way to put it. The bright spot. He's at least been competitive, right? He has been on the mound. He's kept the Tigers sort of in the game. Hopefully, he will continue to do that. But really, I think the big thing now it's just, even though it's just 9 games, we can see the Tigers don't have a starting pitcher on board right now who's going to strike fear in the hearts of anybody, right? They don't have the big strikeout monsters. They don't have anybody with a pitch that's renowned throughout the league as unhittable. They don't have anybody who you see just going out there on a night, every 5 days and dominating. That guy, excuse me, does not exist in Detroit right now. So they're going to have to try to patch this together through the year. And between what they have on staff and what they have depth-wise, it's really hard to see where that's going to come from.
Yeah, I don't know. The one bright spot could be Matt Manning. I thought his start against the Astros only gave up 2 earned runs in 5 2/3 innings pitched. So maybe Matt Manning could be that pitcher. Obviously, I think there's a lot of doubt there. But if he could potentially be that horse for this rotation. But other than that, yeah, like Michael Lorenzen, he had a rehab start in AAA. Hopefully we can see him back. Bo Brisky, I'm not sure when to expect Bo Brisky back. Do we have any idea like what I know it's an arm issue. Like I don't even really know if we have a timetable for him.
They haven't put a timetable on it, but it doesn't sound imminent by any stretch. I would be shocked right now because even if he were to start, they're going to have to build him back up, I I know some people don't think that we'll see him this year. I would be stunned if he's back before the All-Star break. From what the whispers that have been out there about him.
Yeah, and this is what we were talking about before the podcast started, was how early is it to really not cause for concern, because we didn't have high expectations for this team to begin with, but I mean, fans do have the right to be upset because they've been bad for so long. I mean, at some point you just kind of get used to losing, and I think a lot of people have. But we said 40 games, the next 31 are all against teams that were over 500. Like, how upset can you really get? I don't really know.
Well, I think most years, let's say they just gotten done with a stretch of winning baseball, and this was a rebuilding starting now. They had contended as recently as 2 years ago, right? Which they haven't, obviously, but let's say they had. Uh, People wouldn't have that excuse of, oh, we're sick of rebuilding. Okay. So now you could just say, okay, now they're a bad team. They need to strip it down and start over, and they're rebuilding. Great. We've been through a couple rebuilds already in the last decade. So it's hard for them to sell that now as, well, we got a new guy in charge. We're going to strip it down again and rebuild it up. It's just ringing on deaf ears, right? There's so many folks who are just sick of the level of baseball that they've had. They're sick of having the standings being, meaningless by the early May most of the time. So it is hard for fans to put up with this right now. They want to see a product that's at least improving, right? That there's hope for. But right now, there's not a lot of hope. They're playing very bad baseball. They were predicted to be a bad baseball team, and they're playing worse than the predictions were. So it's an ugly situation. And one thing, when it gets this bad, at certain points in my professional life, we've had organizations that were new and struggling and whatever. And a question that I always like to ask is, forget about everything that's bad right now. What are we doing that's good? What's working? What can we hang our hat on? So I like to try to apply that to sports teams too when they're going badly. And, when you look at this Tiger team, what's going well? And there's a couple maybe individuals who are doing okay, right? We talked about Carpenter. We talked about at least Torkelson is showing signs of life. I mean, those are some good things. But if you look at the broader picture, starting pitching, we just talked about it, kind of weak. Bullpen, kind of weak. Offense, well, in total, they're not scoring a lot of runs, Defense, maybe at times they've made some nice plays, but they've had some sloppiness too. There's just nothing right now as a team that they can hang their hat on and say, yeah, well, at least if nothing else, we're doing this well. And that's a hard place to be, and that's certainly a hard ticket for them to sell to people.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of the thing. Like with the Pistons, their rebuild has been almost pretty much as long, almost as bad as the Tigers. But the thing is that fans maybe have just become numb to losing there as well. But just trying to find positives, just trying to look at trends or individual performances that maybe we can look at. And you mentioned some guys already. I do think there is a couple bullpen arms that you could be intrigued with and be happy with. I think Mason Englert, 5 1/3 innings pitched, has only given up one earned run. I think he's a guy that, if Wentz continues to struggle, if Turnbull continues to struggle, could get some starts. So I think that's a positive. And that's a Scott Harris guy as well. And obviously we know people from the Texas Rangers were very upset to lose him, and only 23 years old. I think he's a guy that you could potentially build around for the future. Alex Lange has only thrown 2 2/3 innings, but I think he looked pretty solid today. And Jason Foley, I thought Jason Foley looked really, really good today. His velocity was up there today. And those guys are both relatively young too, both 27 years old. So those are at least 3 relievers who you have control of for the future that maybe if they're not with you for the long term, you could potentially trade them down the line. But
well, Lang and Foley potentially. I guess there is that possibility. Yeah. Well, hey, there he is.
Hello.
So we're trying to be positive, Raj. So we're trying to talk about some good things that we've seen. Oh, we just got another one.
Yeah, that's Chris right there. I'm gonna just say something. It's something that I wanted to just a little bit of a rant, if you will, not a little bit of a kind of a blowing off steam here with this. But look, I have to remember that there's Tiger fans outside of Twitter, and there's Tiger fans that are everywhere in every platform. But some of the things I saw this weekend about Austin Meadows and his condition and commenting was just disgusting. The guy's a human being. How the Tigers played this weekend, and we'll talk about that here in a minute, because there's some things that I on Saturday they seem a little off. We'll talk about that. This team is not good. Okay, we know this, and the amount of anger after 9 games of this is going to be the worst season ever, I think is a little ridiculous. I understand this team is bad, and like that's in terms of what Larry's saying. Larry Love in our chat says the time is now for Hinch to face criticism. This is your year with not a lot of talent and the lack of fundamentals. Larry's right. I can't argue that. What I saw this weekend, especially with Eric Haas behind the plate a little bit, and some of the things that are very concerning. You should be concerned. But I think I'm going to wait till 40 games before I'm going to sit there and say this season is a wash. And it doesn't look good going into Toronto. Toronto is a very good team. It's going to be their home opener. Plus, Toronto has moved in their fences. They've changed their fence dimension. So it's one of those things where, and Hinch is not going to do that. Hinch is pissed. I mean, he said shit. He said shit, the word shit today. And look, going down there in the last couple of days in the press room, you could tell it's the same kind of it's building. But right now, he's trying to steer the ship because it's way too early for him. And they're not in, as he said, it's not every day. It's paraphrasing, but just a little bit that one day at a time kind of thing for him. But you don't think he doesn't know this team is bad? Yeah, of course he does. What are they going to do about it? They could have, again, people are already saying, well, Harris should have spent. On what? On what? There, some of the names out there, do you think they really wanted to come here? We don't know that. We don't know. And the thing is, ultimately, right now, is, yes, you should be mad. You have every right to be mad. I'm not disputing that whatsoever. And this start really sucks. But some of the things I've just seen about, almost like it just feels like the sky is falling already. And I don't know, like the offense is, they're being outscored. The bullpen is where I don't understand. We talked about this numerous times. How'd you not address the bullpen more? Outside of taking, you look at the positive. Trey Wingate had a good inning. That's great. But we can't, it's going to be a long season, folks. But for now, I'm not going to have a full meltdown until I see more. And right now, the Houston series was it was a nice little, it's like a tease. Like, ooh, look, what the Tigers can be. And against Boston, Saturday's game was one of the worst games I've ever sat through in my life.
Non-competitive.
Well, they got competitive towards the end, Yooper. But again, it didn't matter. But at that point, it didn't matter. And today, they got a couple runners on base, but just could not pull the trigger. You shouldn't have Zach. What's his face again? McKinstry on a bases loaded situation. And somebody asked, well, how can they put Matt Verling out there and let him bat? Well, Matt Verling's 0 for 3 against Jensen. So, all right.
Okay, yeah, but were people really blaming AJ Hinch though? Like, AJ Hinch is not the one up there batting. Like, this offense couldn't score today. Like, he's not up there pitching. Like, Joey Wentz couldn't throw any strikes. Are we really gonna blame AJ Hinch for this? Like,
you see some valid criticism about like Rogelio was saying, like, why aren't you pinch hitting for this guy here or pinch running for that guy? I generally have had very little issues or issue with AJ Hinch's in-game managing over the years. I think he's thoughtful. I think he thinks these things through ahead of time. I don't think he ever gets really caught off guard, and there's always a reason for him doing something. Whether or not that reason's good, I don't know. Like Zach McKinstry hasn't been a great big leaguer. Neither has Matt Vierling, but do you make a decision because he's 0 for 3 against a guy? I don't know. But it doesn't really matter because I do think the overall point is this was a very bad team last year. And we don't know this for sure, but based on what they did, it sure seemed like Scott Harris was constrained on what he could spend money on, how much he could spend. And so his choices were, do I go for spending money on free agent hitters? Do I spend money on the bullpen? Do I spend money trying to get some starting pitching? And I think he looked at it and said, well, the starting pitching is the biggest area of concern, even though it was a historically bad offense. He thought maybe I can trade some relievers for some hitters. And he did that. Now, I don't know. We haven't seen Nick Maton much. We saw him in spring training and he looked good, and we've seen him through 7-8 games this year. I don't think he's like going to hit .90. I don't think so. It's a really rough start. I don't think Javi Baez is going to hit under 200. There's just a lot of guys off to bad starts. And it's all happening at the same time, and it's baseball, and if it happened a month from now, we might not notice. But when you start like this, people really get upset. And it's like 3 years in a row where it started like this. So I understand the criticism, but it's 2 years ago, everybody was hailing AJ Hinch for turning a bad roster into a near 500 team. And then last year, everything went to hell. And so far this year, things aren't looking great. But it's just so early. Like Raj said, the 40-game thing has been around forever. I think it's valid. I also understand why people are upset because it's been non-competitive baseball. But yeah, I don't know. We can complain about Hinch. Nothing's going to change. You're just kind of yelling at the moon.
Just before you guys came on, John and I were talking. Something I ask people at work all the time over the years is, what are we doing good? What are we good at? What can we hang our hat on? And, with the Tigers in the situation they're in, when you look at the bullpen, starting pitching, offense, well, defense, maybe a little better. Where would you say is the one thing they can hang their hat on and say, hey, we do this okay, and we can use that going forward to build from?
You know what? Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I got nothing right now.
Yeah.
That's
a hard place to be in.
No, it is. The only thing I can say that they could hang their hat on is individual, in terms of like individual performances or individual in general. Matt Boyd's start today, he ran out of gas a little bit, but his stuff was not bad. Considering where he's been, again, second start after surgery, the fact he kept the ball in the yard is one thing. It's for one, but two, I look at Akil Baddoo. Akil Baddoo, first and foremost, there's this stereotype that he's a 4A player, and I wish that people would just shut the F up about that, because look, if he was a 4A player, he would not be one of the first people to get called up. And yesterday when he spoke to us, this was Baddoo's schedule, okay? He got up at 4:30 in the morning in Omaha. Last night, be ready. After the game, he found out he was going to be called up. So he got up at 4:30 in the morning, took a flight from Omaha at 7:30 in the morning, got to his apartment in Ohio, got his stuff, and went to the hotel. Keep in mind that when the clubhouse opened, we had no idea. We had literally no idea until everybody found out at the same time about Austin Meadows.
Mm-hmm.
So he literally came up there probably within, again, this is all just speculation, but somewhere in the neighborhood between 1:30 and 2 o'clock. And by then we're back upstairs. We talked with Hinch about 1:20. So it was, and then he came up, got 2 hits. Then he came back today and got 2 more hits today. And Sergio probably said it right. When fans see a light at the end of the tunnel, this is why they get upset. But again, those, to answer your question like that, Yooper, I think I see individual performances versus as a collective because the bullpen's already taxed. They're not striking out anybody. I mean, you could take about Shreve today with a pair of strikeouts, but oh well. I mean, the game was out of hand at that point, and Jake Rogers. You know what? Taylor's right. Jake Rogers, even as a catcher, purely as a catcher, it's night and day compared to Eric Haas out there. Night and day. He's framing better, and he's calling a good game. And one of the things he said yesterday was the pitch that he was talking about Wentz getting squeezed a little bit, and Wentz was a little squeezed. But however, you walk somebody on 4 straight pitches and help your cause. But anyway, the way he's calling the game and putting these guys in there, I give him some credit. So,
it's interesting though that we're on the same page. Before you guys got here, I just said individual, yes, but in terms of in a larger scope of things, parts of the team that you can really rely on, they just don't have anything right now as a collective.
Well, I think their bullpen is not as bad as you guys are making out to be. I think their starting pitching has just been so bad that their bullpen is being taxed so much.
Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
Oh well, I can't think of every single start. The one real stinker that I remember was Turnbull in Tampa. A lot of the outings, it seems like the starter is going 4, getting 5, and then leaving with some guys on base, and it's like every damn time those guys come in and score, and it makes their numbers look. I mean, it's still the earned run, right? But when you leave 2 men on and they both score, that's not necessarily your fault. So I think that those numbers look bad. I don't know. I also think maybe in Scott Harris's mind, in an ideal world, they sign Lorenzen and they sign Boyd. They make 15, 20 starts for him over the course of the season. And then some help comes up from the minors. And those guys move into the bullpen. And suddenly you've fixed 2 issues. But so far, not great. Lorenzen had 2 good innings in Toledo the other day and then melted down in his third and walked like 3 guys. So it's like not a whole lot different than what's going on in the big leagues. But, yeah, I mean, it's hard to point out anything exciting right now. And like I understand the frustration from fans, too, because even the guys we're supposed to be excited about, like Riley Green, he's striking out 32% of the time, hitting everything. He's pulling everything on the ground. It's not great. He can hit home runs. He can hit the ball in the air to the pull field. There's a video of all his home runs from 2021 on the Tigers Minor League report that you can look at. 10 of them, at least, are to the pull field. He can do it. He just hasn't done it much in the big leagues for whatever reason. And then you got Torkelson, who was hitting the hell out of the ball in spring, still hitting the ball hard, but in all the underlying metrics look great. And then you look up and he's got a 60 WRC plus and 1 home run. And it's like, I understand the fan frustration. It's just got to be, when are these guys finally going to produce? And it's I don't know if there's much worse than watching baseball with an inept offense. It makes you feel like it's like 27 failures. Yeah, it's like 3 hours of failure every 5 minutes. Yeah, it's just like, oh.
Well, at least this year it's only 2 hours and 35 minutes.
Yeah. And by the way, I put it in the chat. By the way, old BK, he's right about that. I think that is right. The pen has allowed 22 of 18 inherited runs to score. And one of the things the reason why, John, I disagree with you about the bullpen, or respectively disagree with you, I should say, because is that stat right there. And this is a staff that the ERA is 6.89 but then again, I look at it this way. So I was thinking about this, and in terms of reliever, okay, this is a stat. That part I was going to say at least I'll get back to in a second. The Tigers as a bullpen right now, 6.69. That is not nice. That is not nice for K per 9. So yeah, their bullpen, and the reason why too is also Jose Cisnero, which is his slider, has shown better spin. It's actually spinning higher, but he hasn't got any swings and misses on it. So if you're a batter, all you're waiting for is that fastball and that quote unquote changeup he throws. You can sit on his fastball and nail it. And Foley pitched well today, but Foley's also allowed a lot of he's allowed runners to score. So at least we're not. This is what I wanted to wait on. At least we're not the Oakland A's. Okay, look at the Oakland A's. They have, so you're asking me, well, how bad are the Oakland A's? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Oakland A's they have the same record as the Tigers. They're 2-7, right? But this is where it gets bad. Oakland has a run differential of -45. and they don't. It doesn't. Oh, I mean, name me 4 or 5 A players. In terms of like they're talking about they have 13 games in 13 days. Can you imagine being an A's fan? I mean, the A's didn't even like the Tigers. Whatever you can sit there and say about their offseason, they didn't try. Oakland was like, "We're giving you away. Screw you. We don't care." Again, just trying to look at it from that standpoint. Today they lost to the Rays 11-0. I mean, they got smoked, absolutely smoked.
I want the Tigers to be better than the A's.
Yes,
I think that's a decent baseline. Right now, they both look awful. People have been pointing out, the Rays have started 9-0. They keep winning by 4+, like was his stat the other day. But they have played probably the 3 worst teams in baseball to start the year.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. But, sometimes you got to beat the bad teams. The Astros couldn't do it, right? Red Sox did, but so.
Yeah, I did see like for the Rays note, like the teams that they've beaten, the Nationals won a series from somebody decent. I forget who. And then the Tigers beat the Astros anyway. So some of the teams that they have been crushing were at least competitive in other series.
Yeah, and you have to consider too. Maybe it's when you look at the teams like the Pirates who've won back-to-back series, and they only did that once last year, and they're also a good series. But then they got some bad news today, as Onel Cruz is out, going to be out for a while.
Looked bad.
Yeah, it looked really bad. I mean, the fact that he was correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, but when the brawl broke out, the benches cleared, he was just still laying there, right? And no one gave.
Yeah, they moved the mass of people down the baseline enough to keep him out of harm's way. But if that had really broken into something, that could have been very bad, where he was laying there with a busted foot.
Yeah, but I think the one positive I also want to add is the thing that Scott Harris did this offseason was to try to build up as much depth as he possibly can. So when guys, bullpen arms like Tyler Alexander and Garrett Hill and other guys like that have struggled. Well, you have guys like Kervon Castro, Miguel DePozo, you have Alex Fideo, Brandon White, Michael Lorenzen's obviously going to come back from injuries. You have guys that are going to have that opportunity. It's not like last year where these guys are going to struggle and you have really no other options. I think if these guys continue to struggle over the next coming weeks, they're simply just going to be sent down and other guys are going to get an opportunity.
By the way, we just before we answer or we get to your question there, John, the picture they have for Onel Cruz on here, if you're watching us on YouTube. So the caption is he fractured ankle and collision, benches clear around him. But then on the bottom, it's based solely on the wins and losses thus far. The Pirates should be basking in good vibes. They won 6 out of their first 9 games. They've won back-to-back series, a feat they pulled just once last season. They are, in short, playing good baseball, following their 1-0 win. Can you use a better picture for that caption, please? There he is. Like, there's Perez Cruz clearly in pain, and that's the picture. All right.
Yeah. That is. I didn't realize they were off to such a nice start. That's good. It's very unfortunate. Onel Cruz is one of the more exciting players in baseball. I think Sebi Zavala, I believe, called him the B word and then said, "What the F was that?" Because it looked like he stood up and went. I thought it was his knee because it looked like it was knee-to-knee collision, which is never good. But yeah, it just looked like it was just a really awkward play. I don't know. He just maybe got caught in between what was happening there, but it's certainly unfortunate. You never like to see something like that happen. But then, the add insult to injury, the nonsense of this guy writhing in pain on the ground and everybody else is out there shoving and calling each other names.
It was really unfortunate. I think he was coached into that play a little bit. Something around baseball the last couple of years, it's a completely legal play, is when a runner's coming home from third and there's a ground ball to third base, they're being coached now. You can see it. They want them running as far into fair territory as they can to try to upset the throw, right? Mm-hmm. So you kind of see him veer slightly into fair territory, and then put him on an angle. When he finally came in to slide, it was an awkward slide, and he was coming right into Sabala's leg because he was moving to his left to make the tag. And, before it seemed like we didn't always see that. People took a more direct line between third and home. I just wonder if he would have had a safer slide in if that had been the case.
Yeah, and I think one of the things too about that play or the whole situation too for the Pirates is that they were expecting a lot of big things on him, but they've been getting credit to Brian Reynolds, who they were trying to renegotiate their contract with. So there's some opportunities there for the Pirates to at least be competitive. Now, John, the one thing about last year compared to this year is, yes, the rotation took a hit pretty early on, but I think last year was the last year we saw, like they signed, for example, Chase Anderson, but for whatever reason they bring him up. They stuck with what they knew, even though Chase Anderson, I mean, he wasn't putting up great numbers in Toledo either, but they're going to be a lot more assertive about this versus, you're right, they're going to be more proactive. But however, I still think the Tigers could have done at least, like I said, signed another arm. We were talking about that off season. One more arm would have been fine. If knowing now that we know, you look at the way the minor league assignments are right now. Austin Bergner is pitching on the bullpen in Erie. Bo Brisky, by the way, we got no update from Hinch, but he's supposed to see another doctor, which is not good. Yeah. So there might be a possibility. Again, I'm not sure what's going to happen, but there might be a possibility we'll see Bo Brisky pitch this year.
I do think that John does make a point, and then I think that they are probably going to cycle through a whole bunch of relievers this year until they find the guys who perform. And so it'll probably get better, but I don't know what the ceiling is because, like, you got Will Vest, who's been getting bombed in Toledo and didn't have a good spring. He's not looking great. Now, Brendan White has been good so far. And he's on the 40-man, so we're probably going to see him soon. So there will be some movement. They'll probably try Kevin Castro at some point, Miguel Diaz at some point. You mentioned Del Pozo. Who knows what's going to happen with Trevor Rosenthal. So there are some options, but it just doesn't. It feels like it's hard to right now to guess who's going to end up being reliable. It's always
kind of a rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic vibe to those names. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you really got to hope that somebody comes up and establishes themselves. But all those guys, other than Brendan White, have had time in the big leagues and for whatever reason are not there now. So yeah, I think it will get better over the course of the year just through moving some players around, but I don't know how good it's going to get. I mean, we saw Lang's the nominal closer, right? And he gave up another run today, although that was based on I think Haas couldn't squeeze that ball at home plate. But no strikeouts for Lang today. I don't think it's I don't know. It's hard to know what you're going to get from this bullpen any day.
Yeah, and that's where the problem is that I think that even now Hinch. So one of the questions over the weekend, I think Chris McCoskey asked him was, are they looking at, and I posted a video on the Tiger Minor League Report Twitter about asking Hinch if they've already started looking at AA and AAA, and they said, yes, we can look at it, but we haven't, it's way too early. And he's right. I mean, to me, especially when you play St. Paul, in the case of Toledo, for example, they played St. Paul and Omaha. Pitch-wise, they don't really have a lot of pitchers that are really blue chip prospects, if you will. A good indication would be something like Erie, for example. Erie they faced Gavin Williams, and then they pitched against Joey Cantil, who was a really highly regarded Guardians pitching prospect. And Erie finished 2-1 in the series, and they got to Gavin. I mean, they didn't get to Gavin Williams because Gavin Williams is like he shouldn't be at AA. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
but pitching wise, Akron's got some pretty decent prospects. So is West Michigan, Fort Wayne. But if we're looking at the two higher levels right now, Erie, to me, I mean, what we saw yesterday with Ty Madden should be encouraging. Ty Madden was, again, I know it's just one start, but it was the most dominating start I've ever seen him pitch. He looked like a completely different pitcher. So everybody in the chat, if you want me to post this video, I will post it right now because you should see it. It's a thing
It,
of
it
beauty.
reminded me a little bit of, I don't know if you guys remember this, but the beginning of last year, we got to see Wilmer Flores, his first outing in West Michigan, and it was 3 innings. I think he struck out 7, and it was just like, oh my God, he's too good for this level. Now we don't know. Madden's was pretty spectacular, but we do need to see it some more. But yeah, that was a very encouraging sign. But we also know, like, it's not a finished product. Even still, Reese Olson put up great stats in Erie last year, and he's been getting bombed in Toledo because he doesn't have that fastball command. And Madden's is still a little bit light too, but it was everything else that he was throwing was just was nasty, and the fastball was working for him. So, I mean, I'd put an up arrow next to his name, but again, it's just one start.
So, I like the Larry Love here with this question. Over under saves Tigers closer this year 20. I'm gonna have to say under 20 saves. I'm gonna go under for sure.
Didn't we?
When we did our over-under at the beginning of the year, I think for Lang, wasn't it 17.5 or 18.5?
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
I said under because I just think I think the job will rotate around people. And again, I think they're going to win 65 games. So how many saves will there be?
60.
Yeah.
With this offense.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. No, I think it was 18. I mean, is Lang really the closer? We don't really know. Have they even had? I guess they had a closing situation in Houston once or twice, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, they used Lang in like the 7th inning today, and I think the reason for that, it was just they wanted to use him in a high leverage situation. So I guess that technically means that they thought he was their best reliever because it was a game that they were obviously in, and they thought putting him in the 7th would give him the best chance to win.
Save situation wasn't imminent.
Yeah, I don't think. To be frank, I don't think AJ Hinch cares about saves as a stat, right? Probably doesn't care about wins or losses as a stat either for pitchers. Cares about wins and losses for a team. So, yeah, I don't. It's tough to picture more saves than 15, 20. Although Soto top 30 last year, right?
Yeah, he might have.
Yeah, I think
On a 66-win team.
Sure, I guess it's possible.
Yeah, I think, for the offense, we're talking about the pitching. For the offense, I think the first domino that could fall is Zach McKinstry because, like you said, he just hasn't had that much success at the major league level, kind of just like a last-minute addition to the team. I mean, how much of a rope do you guys think he's going to be given before we could see him maybe released and a younger guy brought up to be given an opportunity?
Go ahead, Chris. I'll let you.
I would say at least until the end of April. I'm trying to think of the times when guys showed up and got cut really quickly, and it was Alex Gonzalez, I think, was the shortstop that we talked. He was gone after like 3 weeks, maybe.
About that.
Sometimes it's just like you had an injury at the beginning of the year and you needed a guy, but they liked something about him, his left-handedness, I guess, mostly. But yeah, I mean, I think he would be the obvious candidate to go, and Andre Lipsius is off to a relatively slow start in Toledo, although. If you watch, he's got a lot of strikeouts and not a lot of walks, but he's still putting together really good at bats. So it's just kind of, I assume that'll change soon. But Justin Henry Malloy, he's not on the 40-man, which is going to be an issue there. But he's got a .537 on base percentage right now. He's getting on base even when he doesn't get on base. He reached today 2 hits, a hit by pitch, and 2 errors, which don't count as on base percentage. But there you go, he's on base. So. That could be a bit of a boon. What you want to see from him now, I think, is more. He doesn't have an extra base hit yet. He's got a bunch of hits, and he's hitting the ball fairly hard. So just want to see him, do some more damage. But yeah, I mean, there are some options there, but I do think that they just don't want to give up on people like that, like out of the organization this quickly, because I don't know. There is and that was one of the complaints about Al Avila is that he wasn't a great evaluator and would hold on to guys too long. So hopefully Harris's chain. Or whatever you want to call it, is it too long? But I do think you want to give a guy more than 7-8 games.
Yeah. Well, it's that thing. He's the last man on the roster, or close to it, right? Without any argument. Who cares? I just don't care. They can carry him for 3 months. Great. I don't care. Again, the only thing this season for me that it's going to be judged on is Torkelson and Green improving, a couple of the other young guys looking like potential ball players, and if they can cobble together some kind of pitching staff, they'll have a presentable season. None of that other stuff matters much to me. Zach McKinstry, Zach Short, Andre Lipsius getting a few at-bats a week as the utility man. Okay, that's fine. But again, that's another deck chair on the Titanic example, worrying about Zach McKinstry. And it's not just saying you guys. I'm not saying that at all. I'm seeing it everywhere. Oh, McKinstry sucks. He's got to go. Great, but that's not going to change a damn thing.
I'm glad you bring that up, Yooper, because I think this is the here. I mean, are we really surprised? I mean, this is the same. We're the same. The Tigers are the same fan base. The Tigers have the same fan base that really gets into Don Kelly a lot. I mean, they idolize Don Kelly, which I'll never understand. I will never understand that as long as I live. But it happens. I mean, again, also if you want to go back even further, Jim Wally Rant or
Will Wander.
The team Detroit likes those kind of people, and that's fine. But that's where we're at right now, because it's also, by the way, there's a drinking game involved in the podcast, and so
Yes.
Oh, John,
I know, John.
See that? Yeah.
Oh, John, you didn't see that message, did you? No.
No.
Well, I'll show you the rules. We had a listener who sent in a drinking game for us, and based off our mannerisms.
It's
so
pretty good.
yeah,
It was fun. That was awesome.
Yeah, Chris Paterio is another one. Is another example of that. Always, they're more interested in the backup goalie or the backup quarterback or the utility guy. I will never understand it at all.
And here's the thing: if the Tigers were good, McKinstry would fall into that realm of guys that they love, at the end of the bench because they're scrappy and whatnot. Don Kelly played on some wonderful baseball teams. Okay. He didn't prevent them from being great baseball teams. He didn't really help them being a great baseball team all that much. But it didn't matter because they had real studs on the baseball team that carried it. Okay. So that's why I don't care who the 26th man is now. The rest of the team sucks. Let's just say it. Okay. They're not good, and they're not going to be very good until they up the talent level at the high end. Okay. And the middle tier. But the low guy, I mean, there's always going to be a 26th man. I mean, just deal with it. Zach McKinstry, Zach Short, who cares?
Yeah. Well, Yooper, you did say you were looking for positives like in the young hitters. Well, I think there's positives to be looked at with Akil Baddoo. I know it's only 2 games, but he hit really well in AAA and was called up. Kerry Carpenter, we talked about him before the podcast started. I think he's looked pretty well. Riley Green, his ground ball percentage is down almost about 10%. And then Spencer Torkelson has been a little better, obviously, to the standard of last year. So I think you just have to look at the individual performances, just like the Pistons. They just had one of the worst seasons they've ever had, but you just have to look at the young players like Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren. You just have to look at these young players and see the growth and trust that in a few years they're going to help lead this team to where they want to go. And to guys like Matt Boyd or Spencer Turnbull or, these relievers that are struggling, does it really matter? Because are they honestly going to be here in a year or 2 from now? Probably not.
Yeah, but I understand. But unfortunately, people don't have any patience. They want to see something now. And I mean, with the way the Pistons. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, no, it's just there's also plenty of frustration with the veteran guys. The guys, I mean, Javi Baez is getting all sorts of disdain right now, and he's not playing well. So I get it, and people still want Scope gone, and I get it. And I don't know, you guys already touched on Austin Meadows or whatever, and we talked about like, okay, lay off the guy, but I understand when fans are upset about that trade when you're not getting anything in return. Like you can feel for the guy and hope he gets better, but also be kind of upset that the team has gotten nothing from him. And it's not you're not blaming him. It's just the way it goes. You kind of lost out on that, so it's just a bad start to the season. There's nothing else you could say, man. Like nobody's hitting again, and what Chucky Scribner?
Yeah, that's a name I haven't.
Yeah, so I do think that you hang your hat on, or you just hope that that Green continues to develop and that Torkelson's more of those hits fall and Baddoo can be more 2021 than 2022, and hope that we've seen some flashes from Veerling that were pretty nice. He had that one really good game in Houston. Still waiting for Maton to do anything other than walk.
Struck out 4 times today.
Mhm.
And it's a bummer because we saw he looked good in spring. He hit 4 or 5 home runs, but boy, is it just like every year. It is just a great reminder that spring training just does not matter one bit. You see all these guys putting up big numbers, and then they come out and doing absolutely nothing. And the
Yeah.
guys who look awful in spring come out and look solid. Remember how bad Tyler Alexander looked in spring training? He's been solid so far this year. It's so I don't know. It's hard to find anything to be excited about other than the fact that there are 165 more games or 155 more games, 152, 3 more games, right? Yeah, there's
Yeah,
my math.
153.
153 more games. There's plenty of time to get better or worse.
Yeah, I don't understand getting upset about the veterans either, because it's like Jonathan Scope, Miguel Cabrera, Javi Baez, all these guys. These aren't Scott Harris guys. Javi Baez, unfortunately, is probably going to be here for the long haul. But I mean, these guys are going to be gone probably after this year. Like, I don't really. If Scope is terrible, then he probably won't even make it through the year. So it's like, what? I don't understand getting upset about the veterans struggling.
Well, I mean, I do think that there's an aspect of people are just tired of seeing these guys.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of fans don't want to hear. They don't care that there's a new GM. They just care that it's been awful baseball for 6-7 years in a row now. Which is like we try to put some perspective in. Like this is a guy who inherited this team, and he made some moves. He didn't completely overhaul the roster because again, I think he was a little bit hamstrung. But yeah, people don't want to hear it. They want to see results or they want to see something change. And it right now, the first 9 games look too much like last year, and that's just going to make everybody upset.
There was, you know, what was interesting was there was something on Twitter. I think it was a gentleman who works for Cranes who posted a picture of the chairs at Comerica. They had a little bit of rust on them and they look a little beat up. And they immediately was just a pile on thing where it was like, well, you know, this is how Tigers don't care. And I guess there was a section that's been crumbling. There's some parts of Comerica that are showing their age. No doubt in my mind. So even with like the rush, quote unquote, rush job on the wall, which that's kind of wanted to circle back to real quick about the podcast or in terms of that is that looking at that, there was, I didn't know we had so many architects in the city in Michigan because they were just talking about how bad the wall looked. And honestly, if you did not look at that, like, let's say you had no idea that they extended the wall. Could you really tell? Honestly, I just didn't. I mean, again, that part, a lot of people were making really upset about that. There's nothing behind the wall. Ground didn't break till February 1st. So they literally just did this last minute. And that's you can blame whoever you want to blame on that. And you have every right to gripe. I understand that. But that was another thing over the weekend that I was just kind of perplexed on how many people it was like the same thing with, well, on the artist rendition of on the Little Caesars Arena, was supposed to have these red lights, and people threw a fit that didn't happen. Well, the District of Detroit, the whole District Detroit thing has been a slow go or a joke in certain cases. So, stadium, I don't like the Tiger Stadium. Yes, and Metalbug brings up a good point. Tiger Stadium had a big, giant, damn flagpole in the middle of it. I don't remember people bitch about that. Yooper, I don't know. You know better than I would.
I don't know if people complained about it, but it was often brought up all the time. It was a talking point that the flagpole was in the field of play.
All right.
Yeah.
I like Larry Love's comment. The wall is fine. Score some runs.
Yeah,
yes.
that's what I was thinking.
Larry, thank you. Well said, Larry. Because that. Yeah, it doesn't. It score runs, win a game,
Make plays.
Yeah, make plays.
Yeah, I don't know. It's. I don't know. There's just it's just a shame. You know, we want one of these years. We'd like to see the Tigers get off to a hot start again. I don't know when the last time they did that.
I'm not sure.
I don't know, but does the hot start really matter at the end of that? Like me and you were talking about this. The Angels got off to a hot start last year. Didn't matter. The Pirates, they're looking pretty good the first couple games of the season. Does it really matter if you get off to a good start or not?
Yes, it does when it comes to the Tigers, and I'll tell you why. When the Tigers have done historically well, for example, this comes to mind for 06 as an example. 06, they actually got off to a really good start, and they faded towards the end. Whereas before, if you remember, you probably remember this too. The Tigers, when the Tigers are off to historically speaking, like the 35-5 historic start. Okay, that's historic. But every Tigers team that has done anything of success has a really good first month and second month. They're somewhat either over 500 or they're competitive. So when they're off to this kind of a bad start like this, then yeah, I think it does matter because the Tigers, historically speaking, are not a good in terms of second half team. The 84 team struggled in the second half of the season. The only team that comes to mind that I could think of that was very good towards the end of the second half of the season was the 87 Tigers. Other times it was just like, go ahead, Chris.
Well, I remember that was kind of the stigma against Jim Leland for a while, was that they were get off to hot starts and then fade down the stretch, like 2006 when they lost the division on the final day of the season, I think. In 2009, the horrible collapse. But then 2011, they had a monster close to the season. I want to say that they were within like 2 games of the White Sox and then just blew them away ended up winning 95 games, I think. So that was like, well, so much for that. But for me, like, I wasn't expecting the Tigers to win this year anyway, right? To do anything. I just think for the fans, it would be nice to have a hot start. So because what you get right now is like, hey, just 2 weeks into the season and we already have given up, which is never great. It's like the Lions starting like 0-6 or whatever the hell they did this year, where it was like, boy. But we saw what those Lions did, didn't we? They turned it around and they drove Aaron Rodgers right out of town. And so maybe these Tigers will turn things around and they'll get rid of, I don't know, who do we hate in the Central?
Well, it depends
Everybody.
on flavor. Yeah, everybody.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
The Guardians, sir.
Yeah, but no, I just think for fans it would have been nice to have something like, hey, this is kind of fun. This team's kind of fun, instead of, oh my God, not this again.
Well, yeah, I think they'll be good. Like we saw in the 2021 team, they really played well down the stretch after starting off. I believe it was 9-24. So I mean, I don't know. It's only 9 games. I don't think, like I said, I think 40 games is really when you can start, being able to look at guys and to evaluate the team.
So the Tigers are heading to Toronto. Toronto's getting their own opener on Tuesday. So Matt Manning will take the hill against Alex Manoah, who has just been so far this season. He just has he has 2 starts. He got blown up against St. Louis. He had no decision, but against Kansas City came back down 7 innings, 4 walks, and 5 strikeouts, and just allowed a hit. Again, that's Kansas City. So who knows what he's going to do against the Tigers. Matt Manning they showed some signs. So against Houston, I thought he hung in there. He pitched pretty decently, but
yeah.
He's going up against a pretty formidable lineup in the Blue Jays, who have Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is off to a torrid start.
Yes, he is. Can Matt Manning get through that lineup twice? Will he see the leadoff hitter a third time?
I don't think so.
Well, they need him to, because I mean they need innings out of their starters.
Yeah, so last in MLB right now, innings from starters.
So Wednesday is Aurelio Rodriguez versus Kevin Gausman. So that's going to be a pretty good matchup too. And as far as what Rodriguez has done against the Jays in terms of, it doesn't look really good. I mean, Matt Chapman batting 360, he's got an OPS against over 1,000 against them. So that'll be another. That's a tall order. And then to end the game, to end the series rather, on Thursday, it will be Spencer Turnbull against Chris Bassett, who's not off to a good start right now.
Yeah. I think if we can win one of those games and have 2 competitive losses, I think I'd be happy. I don't know how other people would be happy. But
John sets a high bar.
Yeah. I like your rationale, John, because, I mean,
108 loss team.
Yeah.
Wait, you got 2 win? You think we could win 2 out of 3?
No. I mean, what do I think? I think anything other than a sweep is like, that's we got lucky. But yeah, I mean, it would be nice to take a couple games. I do think, Manoah is a big. He's got great stuff. He's a big emotional guy. I think opening day he's probably going to shut the Tigers down, and it's going to be annoying. Gausman is also very good, but the Tigers have gotten to him before. I think he's kind of like a 2-pitch guy, really, and he used to just dominate the Tigers back when he wasn't dominating anybody else. It was super annoying. And then since he's gotten good against everybody, they've been okay against him, I think. So it's just weird. But yeah, I don't know. I'm looking forward to. I want to. Our buddy Brandon Day and our one of our private chats mentioned something about Matt Manning, and I want to give Brandon full credit because he was the one who noticed this, and he'll probably write about it. I don't want to blow up his spot, but Matt Manning's extension on his fastball has gone from 6.9 feet to 7.3 feet this year, which is about as much extension as you'll see from anybody in baseball. And yet his fastball, batters hit 198 against it last year. They're hitting 400 against it this year. So I don't know. But yeah, you hope that it's not a very overpowering fastball in terms of velocity, but it's for whatever reason last year guys just couldn't hit it very hard. So you hope that that's the case against a very good fastball hitting team. It's hard to sneak a fastball past Bo Bichette and Vlad Guerrero Jr., but we'll see. I'm crossing my fingers there.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there real quick, is there anyone you want to see over the next couple weeks kind of get going? Any guy in particular? For me, it'd probably be Nick Maton, just because he's really strong. He's had taken some good walks, but he really has struggled. Obviously, 4 strikeouts today. I think he's the one guy I'd like to see get going over these next couple games.
Yeah,
that's a good choice.
He's a guy that I mean, it keeps going like this, he's going to end up in Toledo. That's just the way it is. You love his defensive versatility, but you need some offensive production with that. It's kind of the same with Ryan Kreidler. They love his defense, but eventually they're going to have some guys who can hit. I'd like to see Baez pick it up. I'd like to see some of those hits start falling for Torque. Yeah, I don't know. It's just need everybody to pick it up a little bit. Just a couple more hits. Just a few more hits. Instead of hitting 180, try 210.
Yes. Again, high bar.
Yeah.
Set the high bar.
I honestly want to. Yooper, I'll let you go next here. I want Javi Baez to go out there and have a good week. Honestly, he needs a good week. Tiger fans have been just. Again, here's the thing that too I don't understand. Well, he's a free swinger. That's what you signed. How is this news to anybody? Did I miss the boat? we every Tiger fan used to make fun of him when he was swinging like that at the Cubs. So stop pretending that he's. Anyway, I'm gonna pull up the drinking game too. But Yooper, go ahead.
Oh, for me, I'm interested to see more Akil Baddoo. You mentioned earlier, Raj, some people think he's a 4A player. I've seen other people say, well, this is a make or break year for him, which I don't agree with either. I mean, he has options left. They're going to keep him around a while until they have to do something. The guy has skills. I mean, he's a great athlete. He's shown us some things that he can do. He's had a very hit and miss minor league career with injuries and, being a Rule 5 guy. He hasn't had a traditional growth development stage, I should say. I think the guy could still be a player, and I think he's still young enough to develop into a player. So that's the guy I'm going to be watching. I hope he continues swinging the bat pretty well. He did get dusted by Kenley Jansen today. He was overmatched in that at bat, but he did have a couple of hits as well the last 2 days. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, just like you said, there's no shortage of comeback player of the year. There's no shortage of guys that we want to see get better. Like I'm looking at like the list of players. There's like at least 5, probably more than that, of guys I'd like to see be a little bit better over these next couple of weeks.
All right, so I have found this. Okay, so I gotta give a shout out to our listener, Brian Cowell sent this in, and I'm gonna pull it up on our. So if you're watching us on YouTube, we're gonna pull this up for you. So, and this was sent, and it was all good fun, and I really like it. So, Brian, thank you again. We're gonna give you a shout out for this. Hey guys, just wanted to say how great the podcast is. My friends listen to it all the time. We listen so much we've created use our old podcast name, so that's now changed. I didn't check the email. This is an email that I admitted I should have checked earlier, but I didn't get a chance to. So, Podcasting Dream, here's the official rules. Every time Yooper talks about cheap owners, take a drink.
Boom.
Boom. That's there. Every time Chris has to pronounce a player's name for Raj, take a drink. All right. That's accurate. Every time a reference for something that's happened pre-2000 that has to be explained to John, take a drink. You guys will probably take a couple of drinks tonight with this. Every time Roger goes on a Twitter's awful rant, take a drink. Every time Yooper sticks up for terrible umpires, take a drink. Every time Chris references the city of Michigan, take a drink.
No, hold on. Is that something I do fairly frequently? Something I've not realized, that I'm a real provincial Michigan mentioner?
I can see it.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I'm learning things about myself.
And Brian, shout out to Brian for
I have to head
noticing
up to
that too.
Frankenmuth and figure out some things.
Every time Raj says he was at a Tiger Mountain Bar, take a drink. Every time Yooper says you can never have too many arms, take a drink. That's one of my personal favorites. And then this one was pretty funny. Every time Chris speculates on an ethnic background of a player's last name, take a drink.
What? Just because Mike Papersky is very clearly Polish, but yeah.
And the most important rule is every time Roger says, look, the bottom line is chug your whole drink. And you know what? I thought about it. I don't say that. And then I went back. I'm like, yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I do. So thank you. That was awesome. So we'll be back on Thursday as the Tigers will be finishing up their series in Toronto before they come home and play
The Giants, I believe.
Giants. Yeah. So that's going to be another fun series. Thanks so much for listening to the Motor City Metrics Baseball Podcast here at Motor City. The name of we're not technically I haven't posted this on Tiger Mountain Report. I should, but we appreciate everybody checking out both podcasts. So there's a couple people that tuned in to the Tiger Mountain Report. We had Greg Gagne, the voice of the Erie Seawolves. We're going to be out there on Tuesday. So everybody who tuned in there and came over here, thank you. We appreciate that. And now we have a super chat feature over there. So if you want to donate a few bucks for gas or whatever, by all means, go for it. We don't have to. Again, Greg told us we have to say it more often, but I don't like asking people for money. If you want to donate, great. But if you want to donate and go to our Patreon, Tigers Minor League Report, and go from there. So for myself, Chris, Yooper, and John, we'll see you on Thursday evening, and have a good week, everybody.
Thanks, Alex. Welcome back, John, by the way. I got to find out how that cruise went. Nobody fell off?